Hello and welcome to another episode of Literary Gladiators, the show where we discuss and debate literature in all of its forms. If it's written work, it's game. Let's meet the panel.
Hi, I'm Larry.
I'm Cyndi.
And I'm Josh. And Cyndi, it's great to have you here for our 15th season.
Glad to be back.
And Larry, it's always great to have you on board.
Thank you, Josh. Great to be here.
Thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
As always.
Yes.
Today we're going to be going over a play that Larry selected, written by Robert Bolt, and it's called A Man for All Seasons, and it has to do with Sir Thomas More and his fight against the tyrannical way of thinking and the very self-indulgent way of thinking during the reign of King Henry VIII. Larry, you have a discussion starter?
Yes, I do. So this work is written by Robert Bolt, who is described, at least these days, I don't know, for sure, but you look at his Wikipedia page for this play, and it says that he's an agnostic. He managed to write this play, which is beloved by Catholics. Of course, it's about a Catholic saint. St. Thomas More was canonized at some point and is a Catholic saint. So my question to you guys would be, as an agnostic, what do you think the point that Robert Bolt was trying to make by describing the life of this saint?
I mean, first of all, the way that people interpret it is not up to the playwright or to the writer, but it's more so to the person and how they respond to the work at hand. I think that as far as this play is concerned, I think that he was more so looking at the one's ability to go against something that went against common sense thinking, rather than keeping a belief mindset in mind. Like, for instance, with the Crucible, I think that a lot of it was reflection of McCarthyism rather than looking back on a historical event that took place in the late 17th century. It was just more so making a comparison. And I think that he was more so looking at a way of thinking as far as how Sir Thomas More approached Henry VIII's selfish overtaking of the church in his country. It was because he wanted to get the divorce the separation that he wanted from Anne Boleyn, rather than anything else.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I wouldn't have thought of him as being an agnostic or anything like that. But I think that the play very, very much is about activism rather than religious persuasion. And I thought it was very well done.
And it's interesting, right? Because, we have this character, right, who, at the end, everybody is asking him to make an admission that he's unwilling to make. It's because of the fact that he is committed to the truth. And even though Robert Bolt is an agnostic, I can't imagine not believing in an afterlife and being able to persist under that kind of pressure, because the reward, is not seen. It's an eternal reward that he would be that he would be looking for in order to do that, when everything in the world is telling him not just to make the admission that the king is indeed the head of the church.
I think that the play got stronger as it progressed. I think that otherwise it was a very choppy play.
Yeah.
Because I think that there should have been more of a proper transition to More to get that inkling that something was going to happen to him, and then we just cut right to him being imprisoned. I think that it would be interesting to see the arrest take place.
Yeah, that transition was short.
It was pretty much non-existent. It was just, aside from reference, when Moore is talking to his son-in-law, William Roper, on page 67, at least in my version, which was published by Samuel French, now known as Concord Theatricals. He starts reading by saying, "The act states that the king," Roper interrupting, "is supreme head of the church in England." And Moore mentions supreme head of the church in England, and then underlines the words, "so far as the law of God allows." I think that in the general sense it's up for interpretation, but someone like Henry VIII and those that are enforcing his laws are going to say that people will concede to Henry VIII's laws over that of God's, out of convenience and fear.
Yes.
Which, when people do things out of convenience and fear, it really screws things up.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of that over the past few years in this country. And on social media, the truth is not valued in our society.
Right.
What is valued is, this kind of attitude of go along to get along, and that's what we see in this play as well. That's what's happening in England at this time, and we can see this has terrible consequences, or at least the potential for terrible consequences is there.
Yes. Did you feel that any of the other characters stood out in any which way. I mean, for me, I think that Roper made an interesting foil to Moore, and then there were other characters that seemed to stick out for any given reason.
Yeah, the thing about Roper, right,
Yeah.
and what makes this play, I think, more about freedom of conscience, right, than martyrdom, is Moore's got this admiration for Roper, who he sees as a good man because he's following his conscience.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, what makes you a good man, assuming you have a well-formed conscience, which is another issue, right? I mean, your conscience can be poorly formed, and then you think good is bad and bad is good, and following your conscience will actually lead you into greater trouble. But if you have a well-formed conscience, then you have that freedom to discover the truth and try to find the truth and make sure that to study and believe whatever resonates with you. So yeah, Roper I like. His good friend there, the Archduke.
Referring to Duke of Norfolk.
Yes, the Duke of Norfolk guy. He's a great friend to St. Thomas More to the end, and I think that makes for a good character because he's loyal, willing to stand by him until the very end. So that was
Sir Thomas Cromwell.
Yes.
In the piece as well. Interesting representation.
Yeah, kind of an antagonist.
He was in the court scene was the one that pretty much egged things against him as far as trying to get him to conform was concerned.
What do you mean?
The fact that he was the one that was kind of playing the role of a prosecutor or the advocate against him.
Yeah, well, he was always out to get him, though. He didn't like him from the beginning.
The way that it ended, in particular, was a bit more comical than it needed to be. Or just weird, ridiculous in the way that when they had him beheaded, it kind of, the reflection seemed to be like a more serious version of that scene in Young Frankenstein where they're going through the heads and then you just see Igor's head.
I don't know.
You ever watched Young Frankenstein?
I've seen it. No, I don't remember it that well.
I think that there were just aspects of it that, I mean, like with Macbeth, when they did that, I think that the way that they did that beheading was more well put together than this.
I didn't notice. It didn't strike me as any which way as comical. Anyway, it didn't strike me that way.
It wasn't. I mean, not in the funny way. It was just absurd and not in a very in a more weird kind of way, an odd kind of way than something that's more serious in its nature. Because I think that this was a more serious play in its nature.
Yeah.
I mean, that was just an observation.
From the standpoint of the martyrdom of St. Thomas More, it's interesting too to point out that one of the reasons that he's a saint is because he did not seek out martyrdom, and that's an important aspect, that we're not supposed to do that. We're supposed to, accept it if it comes to us, but not seek it out. Because he could have from the very beginning just made that last statement that he makes after he's already been condemned. He could have done that right from the beginning. But, he doesn't do that. He tries to play within the law and stay private about his opinions, which is interesting too, because there's an expression these days about politics, where it's like you could say, just leave me alone and let me, conduct my own business, but eventually, or I, not care about politics. With politics, eventually, he's going to care about you, and that's kind of, what we see playing out in this play as well is like the political force. When you have powers like Henry VIII, he wants complete submission. He doesn't want any room for doubt. So he's going to find even just the quiet people he sees as a threat.
We get a reflection of that in the 20th century too. I think Stalin's the one that sticks out the most. If you were a threat to his regime within the slightest, he wanted you gone or sent to a gulag.
Yes. Another part of that is I think it's Henry VIII's conscience eating him up because he knows that he does not have the authority to do what he's doing. He externalizes that. Well, these people are saying what I'm doing is wrong, so I'll kill them, and then I won't have to worry about it anymore. But not realizing that, of course, you can't kill your own conscience. It's going to continue to eat you up inside. When you're doing wrong. But people tend to do that. They externalize. They say, oh, well, I want to do what I want to do. And if you say that what I'm doing is wrong, you shouldn't be able to say that. They don't allow people to pray outside of abortion clinics, for example. In Ireland, they just made that illegal. Where if you're outside of an abortion clinic, you cannot pray. Because people will see that and they will say, oh, that is your problem with what's going on. Not my problem with what I'm doing, but it's outside of it. I think we see that depicted pretty well in this play. That idea of conscience and externalizing your own conscience.
As far as Henry VIII's thinking is concerned, I disagree with every aspect of it, not just because of the way that he asserts himself and takes away the freedoms of people, but also why he's doing it too. He's doing it for his own personal fulfillments. It doesn't have to do with what he believes is the right for the best of the whole, but it's more so for his just selfish needs, the having he's doing this all over a divorce, wanting to get the separation from Anne Boleyn, rather than what he thinks is the best way of going about seeing a country make progress.
Yeah, and he's only in one scene in this play, and he comes across completely impulsive, swinging by his passions. Like he makes a big show about coming down the river to see Sir Thomas, and then when he sees him, he basically doesn't get the answer that he wants and just wants to completely turn around and go away. Right? He's like just totally driven by impulse, and that is reflected with the way he lived his life as well. Yeah, so I think the scene captured the essence of that kind of character.
I was just thinking about that scene on the river, and I thought when I was reading it, and then I went and I found it on YouTube. I went and I found it on screen so that I could see it, because I thought maybe it would help fill in some gaps. So I'm looking at the scene where he's coming on the water, and like it didn't feel like it meant anything. I mean, except for his pomp.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what he's doing, right? He's bringing all of that, perceived pressure, right? Like, because of the fact that he is the king and he does have all that pomp and everybody, pretty much obedient to him. And it's a big display of that, to go up to Senator Thomas More and say, well, are you going to do what I want you to do? Look at me. I'm the big king.
I don't know if anybody's ever watched 1 versus 100, as far as they had a question about who had more wives, who had the most wives out of the three. There was one person who I can't think of off the top of my head. You had King Henry VIII and Larry King. It was probably some other king, but who would have you guessed had the most wives?
Between those two? Between those two and somebody else.
I thought it would be Henry VIII.
It was actually Larry King.
Really?
That's the one that I thought was correct, too. Because with King Henry VIII had 6 wives.
Yeah.
And the way that people remember them is divorced, beheaded, died, and then divorced, beheaded, survived, because his last wife outlived him.
That's right.
But Larry King had at least 8 of them. I'd have to look up to be sure. Ken Jennings even thought it was King Henry VIII.
Larry King had more on.
Yeah, Larry King had more of them.
Wow.
And there are probably people that have had more than him, too. I'd have to do some research.
Guinness Book of World Records.
I mean, as far as having partners, there's people that have, we don't even want to do that.
That's not even go there.
But
you have to be true to yourself. I think that
yes,
freedom of conscience is very important, and that you have to always remember, that the truth is the most important thing. And as long as you are seeking out that truth, you'll find it eventually. So I think that's...
How would we rate this? 0 to 5 stars, half stars permitted? Larry?
I give it a 4. I think this is a very well put together play when you consider Robert Bolt is an agnostic and was still able to write a play that resonates so well with Catholics and the general public alike. I think that is a tremendous feat, and I give him a lot of credit for it. So I give it a 4.
Yeah, I would also give it a 4. It's very well done. I enjoyed it reading it, and I enjoyed when I saw it on screen. So I think it's very well done.
And I'm going to be giving it a 3. I think that it got stronger as it progressed. I thought it was interesting the way that how the characters were depicted and the message that it brought across, but it was also very, I felt, choppy. I thought that it relied a lot on stage direction rather than it's written to be performed, so there's that to keep in mind.
Yeah, that's true. There's a lot of direction, even in how people are meant to say the lines, right?
Yes. Where should they stand? Where should they enter? Who enters where?
And even what should their tone be in a lot of cases?
I mean, that's that's often the case as far as how people should be, how they should be executing something. Because I've noticed that too. We're going to be going over Music Man very soon. I've noticed it in there as well. I think more so here, because the Music Man relies more on what people are saying and what people are singing. Whereas here it's a lot about what is going on, but also it seems to also, from the reading experience, seems to take away from the message. However, seeing it be performed, I don't know what I would. But then again, seeing it be performed after I had my remarks about the way that it ended and the way that everything took place, it would really have to flow quite well in order for me to really say that I would give it a much higher rating, have a much better experience with it.
It's worth seeing. The movie that they made in the 60s was very good, and then there's a stage performance available on YouTube that you can find that was very good as well.
The interesting thing about the original play adaptation, Sir Thomas More was played by Paul Scofield. Paul Scofield also played the role of Deputy Danforth in film version of The Crucible. Those are completely two opposite characters because it was Deputy Danforth that was looking for John Proctor to give a confession about whether or not he was actually many of people, but then eventually John Proctor at the end, he expected a confession that he was
practicing witchcraft, yeah.
Yes. You go from the extreme of going with what you feel is the truth, fighting somebody who is trying to make you lie about something in order to conform to their society, to being that person that's driving that society of lies onto others. It definitely shows versatility.
Yeah.
If you are interested in reading A Man for All Seasons, here is my copy published by Samuel French, now known as Comic Book Theatricals. But there are other outlets to which one can read this and outlets in which they were published. I want to thank you for tuning into this video. I hope you check out some more from our channel, and for now, keep reading.